Welcome to the first episode of Changing Up. Today we'll be addressing the No Poverty Sustainable Development Goal number one. And I'm going to let Tamara, who will be helping me explain what the SDG is, introduce yourself. So yeah.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. I'm Tamara, and I'm part of the brand value team with the UNA USA organization. Thank you for having me, Tyler.
Cool. So I'm going to get started and define what poverty actually is. So poverty encompasses those who are living under less than 1.9 US dollars a day globally. So it could be anyone who's living underneath that threshold, and it has severe effects on people who actually are affected by that statistic. So yeah.
Although it may seem like it, poverty is something that affects people all around us. About 1 in 6 Americans and 1 in 5 children live in poverty just in the United States. Globally, 700 million people in the world, which is 10% of the population, suffer from extreme poverty today. This includes those unemployed and even those that are employed, as 8% of employed workers in their family live in extreme poverty as well. Life in poverty doesn't just end there. There are also many factors that it's linked to, such as overall health, housing, education, and hunger. For example, poverty is one of the most determining factors when it comes to education, which is something we may take for granted. Around the world, people are more likely to send their boys to school than their girls, especially families living in extreme poverty. Around 15 million girls will never be able to go to school in comparison to 10 million boys. 30% of Americans who live in poverty don't finish high school, and it's found that this is a determining factor when compared to their income levels later on in life. To add, almost all people facing chronic hunger live in poverty. 820 million people around the world are undernourished because of this.
Along with education and hunger, housing and health are also greatly affected by poverty. Globally, poverty is one of the most significant root causes of homelessness. 40% of the homeless population includes families. Aside from education and hunger, housing and health are also greatly affected by poverty. Globally, poverty is one of the most significant root causes of homelessness. 40% of the homeless population includes families, and people's health are also affected too. Some examples of this are shorter life expectancy, greater rates of infant mortality for families living in poverty.
Yeah, and I think this emphasizes the great need for accessible healthcare, especially in communities with high poverty rates.
Yeah, and this relates to COVID too. There has been an 8% increase in global poverty, and 500 million new people qualify underneath the poverty line. And losses due to the coronavirus pandemic can exceed up to $220 billion in developing countries. And that is a major impact across the world.
But there is relief. Funds like UN COVID-19 Response and Recovery Fund are aiming to lessen the impact of COVID-19 on people in need and those who are suffering due to what Tyler has been speaking about.
Speaking of relief, climate change is also a major issue that affects communities in poverty. And our UNA USA chapter has started a new initiative to help aid global climate change by bringing attention and awareness to these issues. So we're doing the 2021 Earth Day event that will be showcasing towns across northern New Jersey to help bring awareness and highlight the teams that have been doing great work to show what exactly is going on in northern New Jersey, and also bring new people and interest the general population of our state so that we can lessen our impact on the world's climate change. Speaking of our group's initiatives, we've brought in a guest speaker to talk about her experience with alleviating the effects of poverty on a global scale. Our next segment is called Innovations in the Industry. Here it is.
My name is Diala Farhan. I'm the UNA USA Northern New Jersey Youth and Community Engagement Chair. The United Nations Association of the United States of America is a nonprofit membership organization consisting of 20,000 members across 200 chapters, 60% of which are under the age of 25. It's a platform for advocacy and education centered around the sustainable development goals. The issues that we tackle include global health, climate action, human rights, refugees, poverty, and all of the SDGs. And with that said, today, we'd like to launch our new Changing Up webcast series, which is an initiative of the Youth Changemakers Committee. We'll be profiling companies and having thought-provoking conversations about the SDGs and action-oriented initiatives centered around those SDGs. With that said, I would like to introduce Emily. Emily is the Director of Programs at Because International. She's going to be speaking to us about how her organization fights poverty by taking a three-pronged approach. And with that, here is Emily.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here and excited to tell you about Because International and what we're doing to help alleviate poverty around the world.
Cool. So this is the first portion of the podcast, and the segment name is Innovations in the Industry. So this is our first week, and we're focusing on the first SDG of the United Nations. And if you don't already know what an SDG is, it's Sustainable Development Goals. And so the first SDG is no poverty, which is what we're focusing on and spreading awareness about this week. And thought it'd be great to have someone from Because International on to help answer some questions and give us some ideas on how to spread awareness about the topic. So yeah, hopefully we can accomplish that.
So essentially, today we are going to be conducting an interview with Emily and Tyler Senzon, who is a Youth Changemakers committee member, will be moderating this discussion. Emily, could you please tell us a little bit more about how Because International is connected to the topic of poverty?
Yes, Because International was founded about 10 years ago here in Nampa, Idaho, out in the middle of nowhere, and really came about because the founder had spent some time in Kenya and discovered some serious needs there, one of them being children without shoes. And he came up with this idea for the shoe that grows. And I'll tell you more about that as we go. But from that discovery, from that time in Kenya, he came home and worked for a number of years on getting a product to market. And started this nonprofit. So we've been using, our mission is to use products as solutions to alleviate poverty by meeting immediate needs through the shoe that grows, and then creating opportunities for empowerment through a program we call Pursuit.
And that is actually a great segue into this week's topic, which is poverty. So with that said, Tyler, please go ahead.
So for the audience, what exactly is Because International, and how does the project named The Shoe That Grows work?
Because International is a nonprofit, based out here out of Idaho, as I mentioned. We started with The Shoe That Grows, and it's been a long process of learning and growing, but we've given away, in partnership with others, about 300,000 pairs of The Shoe That Grows to kids in need all over the world. More specifically, in East Africa, we do a lot of work there, and we've given away just last year 6,000 pairs of The Shoe That Grows.
So can you describe the impact of Because International's work on poverty in Nairobi?
Yeah, our goal is to help alleviate poverty worldwide, not just in Kenya, but we do produce our shoes in Kenya. We started producing shoes in China when we began, and over the last couple of years, we've transitioned all of our manufacturing to Kenya and a factory out in Mombasa. And so this last year, we made 10,000 pairs of shoes there at that factory, and this year we're likely to make closer to 50,000 pairs. So we're creating employment there where our shoes are being distributed the most. We have an employee there who does all of our coordination of services, so we employ him as well there. And then we also work with entrepreneurs from East Africa to help develop their own solutions to issues of poverty in the countries in which they're living.
Cool. What enabled you to grow that quickly from 10,000 pairs of shoes to 50,000 pairs of shoes in a year?
Well, we've actually started off with just a few hundred pairs years and years ago. And our high point was we gave around 80,000 pairs of shoes in 2018. So, or in 2019. So 2020, because of COVID, was such a low year in terms of travel. So we really distributed quite a low number of shoes there with 10,000 pairs. But we see a jump here as people start traveling again, as we're able to develop partnerships in East Africa, that we're going to be able to increase production there and create more jobs, which we think is essential for alleviating poverty.
So what inspired you to work in this field, and was there a moment that changed your perspective on addressing poverty internationally?
Yeah, my master's degree is in counseling, and I actually owned a counseling center for many years. I owned a few more businesses after that. I love entrepreneurship, and I ended up leaving my counseling center and had a couple of years to take a break, and I ended up moving my family to Eswatini, which is a little tiny country surrounded by South Africa. And we just wanted to change. We wanted to go somewhere we could learn and grow, and so we lived there for about 7 months of 2017, and that was just a huge that had a huge impact on me for many reasons. One of them, seeing poverty and need, and being an outsider, and so having to develop relationships and learn how to work in a community. It was just altering for my whole view of the world, how we help people. And so when I came home, I actually was pursued by Because International to do some work for them, partly because of my entrepreneurship background, and partly because of my time there and getting to do some volunteer work there, but also just spending a lot of time listening there. And I think that's what I've come into this new work with, as an inspired to listen. That's been so important for doing community development, for helping poverty alleviation, is that listening becomes more and more important in the work that we do.
Cool. Is there a specific framework that Because International relies on to produce products like the Shoe That Grows? And then if so, how does that work?
We've relied a lot on research from organizations like the UN, like USAID, like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. There's already such great information on how to help, that we don't have to rethink that or redo it. For entrepreneurs, we're really working on entrepreneurial skills that you might not learn in your MBA. You learn from doing. We rely a lot on books, on other organizations that are doing incubator work to help us guide us in the work that we're doing. We also think a lot about how we do the work that we do. And there's a book out called When Helping Hurts, and it's a Christian book. I'm not a Christian, but this book has been really helpful for me and for our organization, for thinking really closely at how we work with poverty, knowing it's such a complex issue. And so we've taken the approach of working with Relief, which is the Shoe That Grows program, and then Development, which is our Pursuit program, where entrepreneurs are already doing such amazing things in their communities, and we're just trying to come alongside and help support them and give them what they need, maybe to take the next step with their business, so that they can create jobs in the areas that they're living and have solutions that are working for a number of these SDGs in the areas that they live.
Cool. So in your opinion, what do you think are the most effective methods that our audience can follow to address poverty, both on a local and global scale?
Well, first and foremost, the SDGs are so important for shaping the work that everyone's doing around the world. When I talk with entrepreneurs from anywhere, everyone knows what SDGs are. So I think that's a very good place to start. And I think within our communities, one of the things I love about the SDGs is that they give you an action item, one small thing you can do to make a difference. So I think that's a great place to start. I think you should get involved in your own communities. There's need everywhere. Certainly lots of places to help. And so find a place that meets your passion and that also helps other people. It's a good way to learn. And then go into it with a listening attitude. Whatever work you're doing, whether you're doing international work, whether you're doing work at home, you need to go into it listening first before you start helping. So those would be my tips.
So what are some of the things that you can do to learn about the current poverty landscape as it changes and has been changing over the past few years? And then has this changed specifically during the pandemic?
Yeah, I am always staying up to date on different podcasts, newsletters. I get Bill and Melinda Gates, their foundation newsletters, and I read everything that comes out from them. There's some great books. There's books I'm reading right now called Factfulness, which is a really optimistic view about what's changed in the last 20 years, the great things that have happened, instead of looking at all the things that are wrong, looking at what's gone well and how we can continue to shape and reduce poverty around the world. So I would definitely recommend that book. Instagram, I follow a lot of different groups that help keep me informed and aware, so I can always be reading articles. So one of my favorites being something called No White Saviors, and they're a group out of Uganda who really challenges your thinking and how you're helping. And I've been grateful for their perspective, for keeping me on track, really thinking critically about what I'm doing, the work that we're doing as Because internationally. So read. That's my encouragement, is that you read, find places to connect on Instagram, on Facebook, podcasts. All of these things are just great ways to stay up to date on what's happening in poverty around the world.
Cool. So that concludes our interview portion of this section. But I'd like to thank Emily for participating in our podcast series. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Emily. And we hope that we'll be able to add to this interview by doing a follow-up interview in the near future with your founder. And, we believe that the work that you do is awesome. It's just so inspirational to see how one organization can make such a big difference in the lives of children in underdeveloped countries. And your footprint speaks for itself. So thank you for taking the time today to speak with us.
Well, thanks for having me. Those are really nice things to say. I appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
You just listened to our conversation with Emily Allen from Because International, and we thought it'd be fitting to explain what our audience can do to help affect change and address this problem. So what can you do right now? We've brought Matthew from our team to help explain what you can do through social media and some other methods as well. And I'll let him introduce himself.
I'm Matthew. I'm on the brand value sector of the Northern New Jersey UNA USA chapter, and I'm here to explain what you can do right now. One way, definitely not the only way, to spread awareness is through social media. Social media has become an ever-present in our lives, especially as teenagers. Such platforms as Instagram are used to spread information efficiently and fast. So events such as local marches and rallies have become organized there, such as No Poverty Marches. Additionally, on Instagram, you're able to post onto your own personal stories for your followers to see. There, you can encourage others to act the same as you.
You can also do things like write on Medium and write about issues you care about, such as explaining the impact of the problem in your area by giving specific numbers as to how many people are affected by poverty or know people who are affected by poverty. There are also other things that you can do on the writing side, like writing for your local newspapers and to expand and highlight issues around poverty and connect that to all of your social media platforms like Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and some others. That would be a great way to spread awareness about the impact and relevance of the problem that we're trying to address. And so that leads into our point of spreading awareness locally. And if you are able to talk to your friends and family about these issues by connecting with yourself with the problem, such as talking to people who've been affected by these issues and doing as much research as you can about people who are dealing with food insecurity due to poverty, the lack of proper housing, lack of safety, lack of access to healthcare, all sorts of issues that you can make yourself aware about. And those all lead back to the main problem of poverty. So those are all issues that you can get more specific about and then choose like a niche to focus on. So that would be a great way to expand your knowledge on poverty while also specializing in a certain area.
Social media is an incredibly powerful tool to spread awareness, but it can only go so far. One of the most important facets of learning about an issue is to fully and effectively educate yourself. And you can do this by talking to older people in your community, especially ones who have worked with organizations and worked with the people affected by this issue. And of course, you have to talk to people who have been affected directly. The people who have been personally affected by these issues are the ones who know the most about it. So learn from them. Politicians and other people in power will not always have the same views as those people. So you have to learn from the source.
There are plenty of ways you can educate yourself, such as researching things on YouTube, like the SDGs. It's more specific. I don't like that. Okay. You can research the SDGs and specifically know poverty on things like YouTube and other platforms. Specifically, you can research seminars, which are also published on YouTube, such as It's Truly Time to Understand Poverty Talk by Diane Robertson, who was a TEDx speaker recently. And then you can also do things like attend conferences on Zoom that you can sit in on. For example, the American Chemical Society recently gave a webinar on how chemists are combating the issues of the world. And the UN also gives consistent talks as to how you can combat poverty locally and internationally. The next step would to be getting involved with organizations who are local and also national. And so we'll get into that further.
After educating yourself, the next step is to take actions and get involved with local organizations. Look for organizations that deal with issues in which you feel passionate about, and see if they have chapters near you. And if they don't, you can start organizations on your community level, for example, within your school. And if you can't join, you can always donate to them.
So donating to organizations like Food for the People, People Against Poverty, World Vision, Amnesty International, they don't necessarily have to be monetary donations. You can donate things like your time, which is donating things like volunteer hours to soup kitchens, or you can help fundraise, or you can talk to congressional offices and help affect policy change, or you can organize your own events such as peaceful marches to spread awareness about the issue. And then you can also do things like sign petitions to also affect local policy change. And then there are also tangible things that you can donate, such as food or clothing or furniture or whatever you don't necessarily need, but would benefit someone else.
Ultimately, you have to research, and find out what's happening in your own community.
Thank you for watching. We'll see you in our next episode addressing Zero Hunger.